My daughter and her husband invited me to visit them. There was no one home. The neighbor came running toward me and started screaming. "Get out before it's too late. They are terrible people," I answered him. "What did they do?" Then he revealed a truth that froze me to the core. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, like it, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached. I'm standing in front of the big, beautiful house belonging to my daughter, Emily, and her husband, in a suburb outside of Dallas. With one hand, I pull my old, heavy suitcase, and with the other, I carry a basket full of my 2 grandchildren's favorite gifts. My heart is overflowing with hope, like a cool breeze blowing after so many years of distance. Too much time has passed since I last hugged my daughter, since I heard the laughter of Sophia and Lucas. Today, I'm sure everything will be different. Adrian, my son-in-law, promised a dinner to bring the family together. That invitation, through Emily's clear voice over the phone, ignited in me a faith in a new beginning. But now, standing in front of the silent wooden door, I'm starting to feel an unease creeping into my body. I ring the doorbell once, and then again. The sound echoes, dry, but no one answers. I switch to knocking on the door. My trembling hand pounds on the solid wood. "Emily, Adrian, are you home?" I shout, my voice lost in the empty space. Only the bark of a dog answers me from the backyard, sharp and distant, as if responding in place of the house's silence. I look up to the second floor, where a window is slightly ajar. The white curtain inside moves gently with the wind, like a mysterious whisper. Suddenly, my heart sinks. Something isn't right. I approach the door, intending to knock again, when suddenly, the iron gate of the house next door swings open with a crash. The screech of the metal startled me. An older man comes running out, looking agitated. His face is pale, his eyes wide with worry. The faded t-shirt he's wearing is on crooked, as if he put it on in a hurry. He waves his hands frantically at me, his voice alarmed. "Ma'am, don't go in there." My heart skipped a beat. I stood frozen, my hand still clutching the handle of my suitcase, trying to stay calm. "What are you talking about? Why can't I go into my own daughter's house?" I asked, my voice trembling, unable to hide my confusion. The man leaned on his knees, panting as if he had just run a long way. He looked at me, his eyes reflecting a mix of fear and determination. "Run before it's too late," he said, his voice choppy but firm. "Your daughter and your son-in-law are horrible people. If you go in, you might never come out." My head was spinning. His words were like sharp knives, slicing through the joy and excitement I had brought with me on the long journey from my small town to here. "Please explain yourself. What did they do?" I nearly screamed, my voice broken with panic. The man took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. He came closer to me, lowering his voice, which trembled like a leaf in the cold wind. "Adrian's father, Mr. Arthur, passed away a few months ago, but it wasn't a natural death." I was stunned. My ears were ringing as if someone had just hit me over the head. "Arthur, he died?" I stammered in a weak voice. "I didn't know. I haven't spoken to my daughter and her husband in a long time." My words trailed off, as if I couldn't believe what I had just heard myself. Arthur, Adrian's father, was a healthy man, always full of life whenever I saw him. How could he have been gone so suddenly? And why didn't Emily tell me anything? The man, who introduced himself as Jack and lived in the house across the street, continued his story, each word like a hammer blow to my mind. Mr. Arthur was the healthiest man on the block. Every morning he went for a run, and every afternoon he'd sit and play chess with me on the porch. He didn't have any sign of illness. He paused, his gaze clouded with sadness. But before he died, he complained to me that Adrian was constantly asking him for money. One time, he even told me, his voice full of worry, that he saw his own son secretly pour a white powder into his wine glass. I felt my legs buckle. Jack's words were like a whirlwind tearing away all the hope I had brought with me. "A white powder?" I murmured with a shaky voice. Jack nodded, his voice becoming hard and determined. "And then Mr. Arthur died suddenly. They said it was a heart attack, but I don't believe it." That night, I saw Adrian and Emily through the window with my own eyes. They looked tense and were acting secretively. They were whispering about something, as if they were hiding a terrible secret. The next morning, the whole neighborhood got the news that Mr. Arthur had passed away. I couldn't stand anymore. My knees gave way and I fell onto the cold front steps. The suitcase in my hand burst open, and the gifts I had so carefully prepared for my grandchildren, the box of candy that Sophia likes, the little toy car for Lucas, flew out onto the brick walkway. They lay scattered, rolling on the ground, just like my newly shattered hope. I covered my face, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill out. "It can't be," I muttered. But inside, fear had already begun to eat away at me. If what Jack was saying was true, then I was facing a danger I couldn't even imagine. Jack knelt beside me, his hand gripping my shoulder tightly, his voice sounding like a final warning. "Ma'am, listen to me. Don't trust anything or anyone inside that house. If you go in, you'll be the next victim." Those words were like the final knife, plunging directly into my heart. I looked up, my eyes blurry with tears, and stared at the heavy wooden door in front of me. It was still silent, but now it was no longer the door that led to my daughter's house. It looked like a portal to a nightmare. My heart was in chaos. The love for Emily, the daughter I carried in my womb, still burned in my chest. But Jack's warning, along with the deadly silence of the house, made it impossible to stop the fear growing inside me. Jack's warning kept echoing in my head, like a sharp knife cutting through memories covered in the dust of time. I remember perfectly the first few days after Emily's wedding. The girl would call me every week, her voice clear and full of life. "Mom, I made that soup you like today, but Adrian says it's a little too salty." She would laugh on the phone, as if everything was fine. I would laugh too, thinking my little girl was living happily with the man she chose. But then, the calls became more and more sporadic. A week, then 2, and then a whole month without a word. I started to worry, but every time I called, the phone would just ring and ring. Or worse, it was Adrian's cold voice that answered. "Emily's busy, call back later," and he would hang up without a single explanation. There was one time, which I can never forget, that Emily called me late at night. Her voice was a choked whisper, as if she was afraid someone would hear her. "Mom, Adrian doesn't want me to call you anymore. He says you look down on him, that you don't support our marriage." I felt my heart sink. "Emily, what are you talking about, sweetie? I just want you to be happy." I tried to keep my voice calm, but inside I was a storm. She was silent for a moment, and then she hung up suddenly. The dial tone echoed in the night, leaving me with a vague anxiety, as if something was slipping through my fingers. Another time, a few months later, I received a call from Emily. This time, she couldn't hide the sobs. "Mom, he hit me." Her voice trembled, so weak that I felt as if someone was squeezing my heart. "But if I leave him, he'll abandon Sophia and Lucas. I can't let my children suffer, Mom." I sank into my chair. Tears streamed silently. "Emily, if you can't take it anymore, come home with me. I'll take care of you and the kids." I pleaded desperately, but I knew I couldn't do anything over the phone. Emily just replied between sobs, "I can't. For my kids, Mom." And the call ended again, leaving me in the darkness of my little house in my small town, with a pain that words can't describe. I remember the first time I saw Adrian after the wedding. He showed up in an impeccable suit, but the handshake he gave me was strangely cold. His gaze was as sharp as a knife, without a trace of warmth. "Don't get too involved in our family," he said, in a monotone but warning-filled voice. I froze, not understanding what I had done for him to say something like that. From that moment on, almost all communication with Emily was cut off. My calls were usually answered by Adrian, who would hang up immediately. Once, I tried calling very early in the morning, hoping Emily would answer, but I only heard his voice grumbling, "Leave us alone." I sat there, the phone still to my ear, as tears rolled down my cheeks. I was Emily's mother, and now I felt like a stranger, cast out of my own daughter's life. During those years, I lived in desperation. Every day I looked at an old family photo taken when Sophia was just a baby learning to walk, and Lucas hadn't been born yet. Emily in the photo was smiling radiantly, her eyes shining with happiness. I would hug the photo, wondering if my little girl still had that smile. I wrote letters, sent gifts, but never received a response. Once, I sent her a box of homemade cookies, the ones Emily had loved since she was little, along with a long letter telling her about my days in town. But a week later, the package was returned, with a note scrawled on the outside. Recipient refuses delivery. I hugged the box of cookies and cried all afternoon, feeling that my own love had also been rejected. I had thought about driving to Dallas, knocking on her door, and bringing my daughter and grandchildren back. But then I got scared that if I showed up, Adrian would make Emily's life even harder, scared of making things worse. I could only pray every night before bed, asking God to watch over my daughter and my 2 grandchildren. But deep in my heart, I knew those prayers couldn't erase the pain of my helplessness. Then, one morning a few days ago, like a miracle, my old phone rang. I answered, trembling, and on the other end of the line was Emily's voice, so clear and cheerful it surprised me. "Mom, Adrian has changed. He's sorry and wants to ask for your forgiveness. He's inviting you to dinner so the family can reconcile." I was speechless. Tears just started to flow, not from doubt, but from a joy so immense, as if a door that had been shut for so long had suddenly opened. "Really, sweetie?" I asked, my voice choked. "Really, Mom? We're waiting for you." Emily laughed, and I heard Sophia's little voice on the other end. "Grandma, come play with me." I immediately packed my suitcase. I took out a pair of silver earrings, the gift I had saved since Emily's wedding, hoping to see her wear them one more time. I carefully packed the box of sweet cookies that Sophia adored, and the superhero comic book that Lucas loved when he was smaller. My neighbor, Susan, saw me all dressed up and smiled. "Where are you going looking so happy, Carol?" I smiled radiantly, feeling as light as if a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. "My son-in-law invited me to his house. He wants to make peace. I'm going to visit my daughter and my grandkids." I took the long-distance bus, carrying a suitcase full of love and hope. The whole way, I caressed the old family photo, my fingers tracing Emily's smile, Sophia's, and Lucas's round little face. I closed my eyes, imagining the whole family gathered around the table, laughter filling the warm house. A fragile belief bloomed in my heart that all the suffering was over, that Adrian had really changed, and that I would get to hug my daughter again. When the bus arrived in Dallas, I called Emily. She gave me directions cheerfully. "Come straight to the house, Mom. We'll be waiting for you here." I smiled, feeling my heart beat again after so many numb years. I dragged my suitcase down the quiet suburban street, watching as my daughter's beautiful house came into view. Everything was bright, clean, as if it were welcoming me. But then, when I stood in front of the door, rang the bell, and received only silence, the joy inside me began to falter. And when Jack came running out with his terrible warning, all my hope collapsed, like a paper house swept away by the wind. But thinking of Emily, of Sophia's clear eyes, and Lucas's innocent smile, I couldn't turn my back and leave. The love for my daughter and grandchildren overcame the fear that was crushing my chest. I took a deep breath, put my hand on the doorknob, and told myself that, no matter what happened, I had to face it. For Emily, for my grandchildren, and for me. Just as my fingers touched the door, it opened with a soft creak. Adrian appeared, with a wide smile, but his eyes were cold, without a hint of warmth. He was wearing a crisp white shirt and well-pressed dress pants, looking like the perfect host. "Mom, you're here? Why did you stay outside for so long?" His voice sounded friendly in a forced way. I smiled, trying to hide the growing unease inside me. "I was just admiring the neighborhood a bit," I replied, my voice slightly trembling, clutching the handle of the suitcase as if holding on to what little calm I had left. Before I could say anything else, I heard hurried footsteps from inside. Emily ran out, her eyes red, and hugged me tightly. Her shoulders trembled in my arms, and I could feel the weakness, the fear she was trying to suppress. "Mom, I missed you so much," Emily said in a choked voice, as if trying to speak very loudly to drown something else out. I held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, trying to hold back the tears that were about to well up. "I missed you too, sweetie," I whispered, gently stroking her back. But in my mind, Jack's words echoed, making me shudder. The little voices of the children pulled me from my thoughts. Sophia and Lucas ran to me, wrapping their arms around my neck. "Grandma, stay with us forever," Sophia exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. Lucas, with a radiant smile, took my hand. "Grandma, I have a new toy car, let me show you." Seeing my two little angels, my heart melted. But even in that warm moment, I felt a cold draft enveloping the house. It was spotless, with expensive and tidy furniture, but the space lacked the warmth of a real home. Everything was too perfect, like a painting carefully crafted to hide a secret. Adrian took my suitcase and placed it neatly in a corner of the living room. He turned around, with a glass of red wine in his hand. His eyes glinted strangely. "Mom, to celebrate the reunion, let's have a drink," he said, offering me the glass. I looked at the glass, and an indescribable sense of unease took over me. Jack's warning about the white powder in Mr. Arthur's wine glass flashed in my mind. I forced a smile and shook my head. "I'm tired from the trip, maybe later, son." Adrian raised an eyebrow. The smile on his lips tensed for a moment, but he didn't insist further, just nodded and left the glass on the table. From the kitchen, the aroma of a hot soup wafted out, pulling me from my heavy thoughts. Emily was busy preparing dinner. Her back looked thin, her shoulders trembled slightly as she stirred the pot. Adrian shouted from the living room, maintaining his falsely friendly tone. "It's Emily's specialty. She spent all afternoon cooking for you." I looked at my daughter, wanting to run and hug her, wanting to ask her what was happening, but Adrian's cold gaze stopped me. I could only smile, nod, and sit down, trying to look calm. At night, the dinner was served, so abundant it surprised me. Steaming soup, roasted meat with a delicious aroma, freshly baked bread, and a plate of fresh, colorful fruit. Everything was presented perfectly, like a carefully prepared banquet. But the more I looked, the more uneasy I felt. Adrian kindly placed a bowl of hot soup right in front of me. His eyes glinted strangely, as if he were waiting for something. "Mom, try it," he said, in a soft but pressuring voice. I looked at the bowl of soup. The rising steam blurred my vision. Jack's words echoed again, like a warning bell. Emily approached, carrying another bowl of soup, but her hands were shaking uncontrollably. Suddenly, the spoon in her hand fell to the floor, making a clattering noise. She bent down awkwardly to pick it up, her face pale. "Sorry, Mom, let me get you another one," Emily said, her voice trembling, and quickly replaced the spoon. I looked at her. My heart was pounding. Was she doing it on purpose? Was she trying to protect me? I reached for the soup bowl, about to lift the spoon, when Emily suddenly knocked my hand, causing the entire bowl to spill across the table. The aroma of the soup mixed with the sound of the hot liquid spilling, and the atmosphere suddenly tensed. Adrian frowned. His voice turned cold. "How clumsy you are, Emily." I saw the knuckles of his hands tighten, as if he were holding back anger. Emily rushed to clean the table with a cloth, mumbling, "I'm sorry, let me serve you another bowl." She returned to the kitchen. She served a new bowl of soup, but this time, just as she was placing it in front of me, her hand trembled again. The bowl slipped from her hands, crashing to the floor with a loud bang. The air at the table grew thick, as if we were all holding our breath. Adrian clenched his teeth. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the edge of the chair. "What the hell are you doing?" he growled, his voice full of threat. Emily lowered her head without saying a word. Her shoulders shook as if they were about to collapse. I quickly tried to calm the situation, keeping my voice steady. "It's nothing, kids. I'm fine with a little bread." But in my heart, I knew very well that Emily hadn't been clumsy. Spilling the soup twice, the look of panic in her eyes, it all seemed like a silent warning. I looked at her, trying to find a sign, an explanation, but Emily just kept her head down, her hands gripping the edge of the table. In the midst of the tension, Lucas's innocence broke the silence. The boy took his glass of orange juice and offered it to me with a radiant smile. "Here, Grandma." I squeezed this juice all by myself. Sophia also chimed in enthusiastically. "I got an A on my drawing today." "Stay so I can tell you about it, Grandma." Looking at the two children comforted my soul, but Adrian's cold gaze passed over me, inquisitive and unreadable, making me shiver. He said nothing, just took a piece of meat in silence. but I could feel the danger lurking, like a beast biding its time. The dinner ended in a heavy atmosphere, as if a dark cloud was hanging over our heads. Adrian stood up, clapping softly, that fake smile plastered on his face. "I'm going to take a shower. You two can clean up," he said, in a soft but calculated voice. He gave me a quick glance before turning and walking towards the bathroom, the rhythmic sound of his footsteps echoing on the wooden floor, leaving me and Emily in the cold kitchen. I followed his back with my eyes, feeling as if a predator was watching me from a distance. My mind was in chaos. Jack's warning and Emily's strange behavior during dinner swirled in my thoughts, preventing me from staying still. When the sound of the shower water started to flow, I took Emily by the arm and led her to a dark corner of the kitchen, where the dim light didn't reach. "You spilled the soup on purpose, didn't you? What's going on, Emily?" I asked in a low voice. My voice trembled, a mixture of worry and hope that my daughter would finally speak. Emily froze. The hands holding a porcelain plate began to shake violently. She turned her face away, but I saw that her eyes were red and filled with tears. Then, as if she couldn't hold it in any longer, Emily broke down crying, her voice choked. "Mom, I heard him on the phone with someone, buying poison. They mentioned the word cyanide." I was petrified. The word cyanide was like a direct stab to the heart, leaving me almost breathless. "Are you sure?" I asked with a broken voice, my hand gripping her arm as if I were clinging to what little reality I had left. Emily nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I heard it very clearly, Mom. That day, I happened to walk by Adrian's study. He thought I was asleep, but I heard him whispering on the phone, talking about buying something, and then I clearly heard the word cyanide. He was planning to put it in the soup for you." My heart seemed to stop. The image of the steaming soup bowl that Adrian placed in front of me, his strange bright gaze, and the 2 times Emily spilled the soup appeared vividly in my mind. I stood in silence, my hands gripping a kitchen towel until my knuckles turned white. "At first, I really thought he had changed," Emily continued, her voice choked. "I believed him when he said he wanted to make peace, that he wanted to invite you so the family could get together. I was so wrong, Mom, so wrong." She covered her face. Her sobs were like knife stabs in my heart. I wanted to hug her, to tell her that everything would be okay, but fear was suffocating me. I pulled her close, whispering, "Don't cry. I'm here now. We'll find a way." But at that moment, the sound of Lucas running into the kitchen startled me. The boy was holding his bright red toy car and exclaimed, "Grandma, play with me. I want you to push this car." Sophia followed close behind, in a whiny voice, "Mommy, I want cake." Emily quickly wiped her tears and forced a smile. "Of course, my love, let me get you some," she said, trying to sound normal, but I saw her hands still trembled as she opened the cabinet to get a plate. I took advantage of the children's distraction and pretended to look for a new sponge to wash the dishes. "Let me find a sponge. I'm sure it's down here," I said, speaking loudly on purpose to drown out the beating of my heart. I bent down, opened the cabinet under the sink, my heart about to burst from my chest. The cleaning bottles were neatly arranged, but behind them, hidden in a dark corner, was a small glass jar. The label gleamed in the dim light, and the word in red letters, cyanide, was like a sharp blade that stabbed my eyes. I slammed the cabinet shut, holding back the scream that wanted to escape my throat. Turning to Emily, I whispered. My voice trembled so much it was barely understandable. "You were right. It's right here, in the kitchen." Emily grabbed my hand. Her eyes widened in panic. "Mom, we can't call the police yet," she whispered, her voice about to break. "If we don't have clear proof, he'll know, and if he finds out, he'll kill us all." I nodded, trying to calm her. But I was trembling myself. The image of that small jar of cyanide haunted me, like a reminder that death was lurking in this very house. Just then, the shower water stopped abruptly. Adrian's footsteps echoed, slow but heavy, as if he were deliberately dragging out the time to observe. He came out, his hair still wet and a t-shirt clinging to his body. He narrowed his eyes, looking at the two of us, huddled in the corner of the kitchen. "You two, what are you whispering about?" His voice was monotone, but I felt the cold suspicion hidden in every word. I tried to keep my voice steady and forced a smile. I was just telling Emily to be more careful next time she cooks, so the soup doesn't go to waste. Emily nodded repeatedly, but her hands were still clutching the edge of my blouse. Adrian smirked, a joyless smile. He came closer. His gaze locked onto mine, as if he wanted to strip bare every thought in my head. "Oh, really?" he said, drawing out the word. And then he walked slowly to the sink, turning on the faucet as if to wash his hands. But I knew he was checking, investigating. In that instant, I felt a chill run down my spine, as if a gust of icy wind had passed right through me. The next morning, I woke up with irritated eyes. I had barely slept, my mind racing with the image of the cyanide jar under the sink and Emily's tearful confession. Adrian got up earlier than usual, his calmness terrifying. He made coffee himself, the intense aroma flooding the kitchen. He placed a cup in front of me, with a smile as cold as ice. "Here, Mom, I put a little sugar in it to make it taste better," he said. His voice was soft, but his gaze was sharp as a knife, as if he were examining my every reaction. I looked at the coffee cup, the steam rising, and my heart pounded. Was there something in it? Had he put something in it, like he did with his own father? I smiled, trying to look natural, but my hands were trembling under the table. "Thank you, son, but I'm used to drinking tea in the mornings. Coffee keeps me awake," I replied, struggling to remain calm. Adrian raised an eyebrow. His gaze darkened for a moment, but he just nodded, without insisting. I glanced at Emily, sitting across from me, her head bowed over her plate of toast. In the kitchen light, I noticed a faint bruise under her eye, like the scar from the previous night's fury. My heart ached. I knew that, after Emily and I had whispered in the kitchen, Adrian had taken his anger out on her. Perhaps he was furious that his plan had been ruined because of the 2 times Emily spilled the soup. I wanted to run and hug her, to ask her what he had done to her. But Emily's fearful gaze seemed to beg me not to do anything rash. I could only clench my fists under the table, holding back the rage and pain that overwhelmed me. Sophia, with the innocence of a child, broke the suffocating atmosphere. She ran to me, holding her drawing notebook. "Look, Grandma, I drew all of us." Her voice was cheerful, her eyes shining. I leaned in to see the drawing and my heart sank. My image, Emily's, and Lucas's were drawn in bright colors, but Adrian, his figure was painted in a deep black, like a ghost in the middle of the colorful scene. I shuddered, not knowing if the child had done it on purpose or by accident. "It's very pretty, my love," I said, forcing a smile, but I couldn't take my eyes off that drawing. Did Sophia sense something about her father? Meanwhile, Lucas was running around the house, and his little red toy car crashed into Adrian's leg. He grunted, his face darkening. "Watch where you're going." The shout scared Lucas, who quickly took refuge in my arms, his round eyes filled with fear. I held Lucas tightly, stroking his hair and whispering, "It's okay, my boy. Grandma's here." But inside, I felt as if I had a knife to my throat. Every action, every word from Adrian was like a warning that he was watching, that he didn't miss any detail. At lunchtime, Adrian continued his act of an attentive man. He put a piece of roasted meat on my plate. His voice was soft, but full of pressure. "Emily prepared this dish especially for you. You have to try it." I looked at the meat. Its aroma was delicious, but it turned my stomach. The jar of cyanide under the sink appeared in my mind, like a ghost I couldn't shake. I rubbed my stomach and forced a smile. "I ate a lot this morning. I still feel full. I'll eat it later." Adrian stared at me. His eyes seemed to want to pierce my soul. After a moment, he reluctantly put down his silverware, but I saw Emily let out a subtle sigh of relief, her hands gripping the edge of the table to maintain her composure. In the afternoon, to escape the oppressive atmosphere of the house, I took Lucas to the yard to play. The boy laughed, pushing his toy car along the stone path. I sat on a bench, watching him, trying to find comfort in my grandson's smile, but my heart remained heavy. Suddenly, Jack appeared, walking alongside the fence. He waved at me, his eyes full of concern. "Good afternoon, Carol. What a beautiful day, isn't it?" I was about to answer him, to find a way to tell him something so he would understand the dangerous situation when Adrian came out of the house. He appeared so quickly it startled me. "It's too sunny out here, Mom. "Come inside and rest," he said, his voice soft, but his hand gripped my arm, pulling me inside. I glanced back at Jack, hoping he understood, but Adrian slammed the door shut, cutting off any chance to speak. At dinner, the atmosphere became even more suffocating. Adrian uncorked a bottle of wine, filled a glass, and pushed it toward me. "Mom, tonight you have to have a drink with me," he said in an authoritative tone. I shook my head, trying to keep my voice calm. "The doctor told me I shouldn't drink alcohol," I said. This time, he didn't hide his anger. He slammed the glass on the table. The sound of glass against wood echoed, scaring Sophia and making her burst into tears. "Daddy, don't do that," the little girl sobbed, taking refuge in Emily's arms. Emily quickly comforted her, but I saw her hands were shaking as she held her. I held Lucas tightly, trying to maintain a false calm, but my heart was pounding, as if it wanted to burst out of my chest. That night, I lay on the couch, unable to sleep. Through the thin wall, I heard Adrian shouting, his voice sounding like that of a cornered beast. Emily's sobs, weak and desperate, broke my heart. I wanted to go in, to confront Adrian, but I knew I couldn't do anything. Without proof, without anyone to help me, I was just a helpless old woman in the middle of this nightmare. Sophia slid off the couch and snuggled up next to me. She whispered, her voice trembling, "Daddy made Mommy cry again. Grandma, my daddy is mean." I held her tightly, tears falling silently. "Don't worry, my love. Grandma will protect your mom and you," I said, but my voice broke, as if I didn't believe my own words. Lucas also woke up and hugged me from behind. My two small, innocent grandchildren were the only reason I didn't fall apart. I hugged them, trying to hide the fear that was screaming in my mind. The next morning, Adrian got up early. His calmness was still terrifying. He announced he had to go out for work and took Emily with him, but not before giving me a meaningful look. "Mom, please take care of the children," he said, his voice monotone, but his eyes seemed to warn me not to do anything outside of his control. When the door slammed shut, I sighed in relief, feeling as if I had been released from an invisible cage, even if only temporarily. My two grandchildren, Sophia and Lucas, were still playing in the living room. Their innocent laughter was a balm in the midst of this nightmare. I was clearing the table, trying to keep busy to hide my anxiety, when I heard a very soft, almost imperceptible knock on the door. My heart raced. I went to open it, and in front of me were two strangers dressed in plain clothes. The older man, with graying hair, introduced himself. "I'm Detective Miller, and this is Officer Kate Riley." His voice was deep and serious, but his gaze conveyed comfort. Kate, a young woman with a sharp face, nodded in greeting. "We need to speak with you, Mrs. Carroll. Can we step outside for a moment?" she said, her voice low but firm. I looked at Sophia and Lucas, who were absorbed in putting together a puzzle on the floor. I didn't want to leave them, but my instinct told me this could be the chance to escape this nightmare. I quickly asked my kind neighbor, Susan, to watch the children for a moment, with the excuse that I had to go to the store. "Go on, don't worry. I'll keep an eye on the little ones." Susan smiled, patting me on the shoulder. I nodded gratefully, praying silently that everything would work out. Miller and Kate took me to a small coffee shop at the end of the street, a quiet and discreet place. We sat in a secluded corner, where the aroma of coffee mixed with the soft music from an old speaker. Detective Miller got straight to the point, his voice deep but sharp. "Mrs. Carroll, we're here because of a statement from Jack, your daughter's neighbor. He claims that before he died, Mr. Arthur, Adrian's father, was completely healthy. He confided in Jack that he saw Adrian secretly pour a white powder into his wine glass." I felt my blood run cold. The image of the cyanide jar under the sink appeared vividly. "White powder," I murmured, my voice trembling. Kate continued, her gaze cold, but full of determination. "We've investigated and discovered that Adrian has a huge debt with a dangerous local crime syndicate. His father's death occurred right when he needed money to pay that debt, and shortly after, he inherited all of Mr. Arthur's fortune." Kate's words were like a hammer blow to my head. Trembling, I told them everything, trying to keep my voice calm, but my hands were clenched so tightly they hurt. I saw with my own eyes a glass jar with the word cyanide written on it, hidden under the kitchen sink, I said. My voice broke as I remembered that horrible moment. Emily also told me she heard Adrian mention cyanide in a phone call. I'm afraid he's planning to harm me. Miller nodded, his face as serious as a carved rock. That is extremely important evidence, Mrs. Carroll. If possible, try to take a photo of that cyanide jar. We are processing the exhumation of Mr. Arthur's body for a new autopsy. If we find traces of poison, we will have enough grounds to arrest Adrian. Kate placed her hand on mine. Her voice softened. You must remain absolutely calm. Don't let Adrian suspect anything. Everything will come to light soon, but you need to be careful. He is a dangerous man. I nodded, but inside I was a storm. I wanted to scream, to run and hug Emily and my grandchildren, to get out of that house immediately. But I knew that if I acted rashly, Adrian would notice. And then, not only me, but Emily and the children would also be in danger. I'll try, I whispered in a weak voice. Miller gave me a small piece of paper with Kate's phone number on it. If there's any emergency, call us, but be careful. Don't let him see you, he warned, his gaze full of concern. When I returned, my heart was pounding as I saw Adrian already sitting in the living room, his arms crossed. He looked at me. His inquisitive gaze was as sharp as a knife. Where did you go so early, Mom? His voice was monotone, but I felt the suspicion brewing. I quickly showed him the bag of candy I had just bought at the nearby store, forcing a smile. I went out to buy some candy for Sophia and Lucas. They love it. Sophia ran to me, screaming with joy at the sight of the bag, but Adrian's gaze remained fixed on me, as if trying to read my every thought. Oh, really? He said, drawing out the word, and then he got up and went out to the backyard without saying another word. I sighed in relief, but my heart was still heavy. I knew he didn't believe me, and every second I spent here, I felt like I was walking on a minefield. I hugged Sophia, stroking her hair, trying to find comfort in my granddaughter's innocent smile. But the image of the cyanide jar, Jack's warning, and Emily's desperate look continued to haunt me, making me tremble uncontrollably. That night, the atmosphere in the house became even more suffocating. Adrian returned with a frown, as if something had gone wrong for him. Just because Emily took a little long to serve dinner, he threw all the dishes on the floor. The pieces of broken ceramic flew everywhere. The crash sounded like a threat. Sophia screamed in fear, taking refuge in my arms, while Lucas clung to my leg, his round eyes filled with terror. "Why are you always so slow?" Adrian roared, his eyes bloodshot. Emily remained silent, bending down to pick up the pieces. Her hands trembled as if she were about to collapse. Trembling, I protected my 2 grandchildren, holding them tightly, trying to whisper, "It's okay, my children. Grandma is here." But inside, I felt like I was breaking into pieces myself. Seeing Emily, the daughter I loved so much, with her head bowed in her mission, made me cry. I wanted to confront Adrian right then and there, but Kate's words echoed in my head. Don't let him suspect. I knew that if I acted impulsively, all hope would vanish. Every day that passed in Emily and Adrian's house was like a silent battle, where I had to maintain an appearance of calm while my heart never stopped trembling with fear. Kate's warning, "Don't let Adrian suspect," was like a mantra I repeated in my head, but his every glance, every indirect comment, made me feel as if I were walking a tightrope over a chasm. I knew that if I wanted to protect Emily and my grandchildren, I had to act quickly, but with the caution of a hunted animal. One morning, just as the sun was peeking through the window, Adrian announced he had to go out to take care of some business. Again, he took Emily with him, but before leaving, he turned and looked at me with a cutting coldness. "Mom, stay home and watch the kids. Don't go too far," he said, his voice monotone but full of warning. When the door slammed shut, I sighed in relief, but the feeling lasted only a few seconds. I knew my time was running out, and every moment Adrian was away was a valuable opportunity. I was sitting with Sophia and Lucas, helping them with a puzzle, when Emily returned alone, her face pale. She took me to a corner of the kitchen, where the dim light hid the panic in her eyes. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling, handing me a crumpled piece of paper. "I found this in his drawer." I took it. My heart was pounding. It was a promissory note, with Adrian's thumbprint, detailing a debt of tens of thousands of dollars to the local crime syndicate. His scribbled signature and the blood-red seal made me shudder. I found it while I was cleaning his study, Emily continued, her voice choked. He had it hidden in the back of the drawer, thinking I would never find it. I quickly tucked the paper inside my blouse, close to my chest, where I could feel my racing heart. "I'll give this to the police," I whispered, squeezing her hand. "Don't worry, we're going to get out of this." But Emily's eyes were full of despair, as if she had lost all hope. "Mom, if he finds out I took it, I don't know what he'd be capable of doing," she said with a trembling voice. I hugged Emily, trying to hide my own fear. "I'll be careful, he won't notice," I said, but inside I knew I was facing a wild beast. That afternoon, my phone vibrated with a message from Detective Miller. "Meet me at the laundromat on the corner at 2 o'clock in the afternoon." I looked around, making sure Adrian hadn't returned yet. I pretended I was going to wash the tablecloth. I tucked the promissory note into my sweater pocket and took Sophia and Lucas to Susan's house. "Watch them for a little while, please, I'm going to wash this," I said, trying to sound calm. Susan smiled. "Don't you worry, they're safe here with me." I nodded gratefully, but I felt like I was entering a dangerous game. At the laundromat, the strong smell of detergent mixed with the hum of the machines. Miller was standing in a corner, dressed in a simple shirt, but his gaze was as sharp as a hawk's. I discreetly handed him the promissory note, whispering, "This is what Emily found in Adrian's room." Miller unfolded the paper, scanned the lines with his eyes, and then nodded. "This is very solid evidence, Mrs. Carroll. It proves Adrian's motive. If we combine this with the autopsy results, we'll have enough to arrest him." I sighed in relief, but my heart was still heavy. "Thank you, Detective," I said, my voice trembling. "But please, hurry. I'm afraid he'll do something to my daughter and my grandchildren." A few days later, while I was playing with Sophia in the backyard, my phone vibrated. It was Kate. "Mrs. Carroll, we have the autopsy results." Her voice was serious but full of determination. "There are traces of cyanide in Mr. Arthur's body. Just as you said, Adrian poisoned his own father to get his inheritance." I stood frozen, clutching the phone. The image of the cyanide jar under the sink appeared vividly, a confirmation of the nightmare I was living. "So, what do we do now?" I asked, my voice broken. "Take a picture of the cyanide jar if you get the chance," Kate replied. "We need direct evidence from the scene, but be very careful. Don't let him suspect." That night, the atmosphere in the house was more suffocating than ever. Adrian sat at the table, glancing at a newspaper, but he never took his eyes off me. He suddenly said, in an insinuating tone, "Older people sometimes have strokes very easily, Mom. A simple meal that doesn't agree with them can make them pass away at any moment." His words were like a blast of icy wind that ran down my spine. I forced a smile and replied, "Yes, I know, son. I'll be careful." But inside, I felt like I was facing a beast about to attack. Adrian became increasingly irritable. A simple look from Emily, an innocent phrase from the children, was enough to make him growl. Sophia and Lucas lived in fear, always sticking close to me. One afternoon, while I was telling Sophia a story, the little girl hugged me tightly and burst into tears. "Grandma, my daddy threatened to leave us all. He said if I don't behave, he's going to kick me and Mommy out." I held her, my heart broken. "No, my love, I won't let that happen," I whispered, but my voice broke, as if I didn't believe it myself. Taking advantage of a morning when Adrian went out, I gathered all my courage and slipped into the kitchen. My heart pounded as I opened the cabinet under the sink. The cyanide jar was still there, like a ghost in the dark corner. Trembling, I took out my phone and snapped a quick picture. Every little noise in the house made me jump. I sent the photo to Kate, my heart still racing, as if Adrian could appear at any moment. "Received," Kate's message replied, along with a warning. "You did very well. Stay safe. We're about to move." The following days in Emily and Adrian's house were like an endless nightmare, where every moment was filled with tension and fear. After my secret meeting with Detective Miller and Kate, I knew the police had enough evidence to arrest Adrian. The promissory note, the autopsy results for Mr. Arthur, and the photo of the cyanide jar I had taken while trembling. They said they were just waiting for the right moment to act. But that weight made me feel like I was standing on a time bomb. I knew the days of living in fear were about to end, but it was also at that moment that Adrian became more dangerous than ever. He was like a cornered beast, ready to attack anyone who got in his way. Every morning, Adrian would appear with a terrifying calmness. That day, he placed a glass of orange juice in front of me, with that fake smile plastered on his face. "Here, Mom, so you can get some strength," he said, his voice soft but his gaze cold, as if he were examining my every reaction. I looked at the glass. The water droplets on the crystal shone in the light, but in my mind, the image of the cyanide jar under the sink appeared vividly. "Thank you, son, but I just had tea." "I'm very full," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm, though my hands trembled under the table. Adrian raised an eyebrow. His gaze darkened for a moment, but he didn't insist, just nodded and left. But I knew he was suspicious, and every time I refused, his suspicion grew. At noon, he continued his act of an attentive man. He served me a plate of beef stew, the aroma of the meat and vegetables spreading, but to me, it smelled like danger. "If you don't eat, you'll be disrespecting your daughter and me," he said, his tone halfway between a joke and seriousness, but his gaze seemed to want to pierce my soul. I looked at the plate, my heart pounding. Emily, sitting across from me, kept her head down, her hands gripping the edge of the table. I knew she was scared, that she was trying to protect me. "I'm a little tired. I'll eat it later," I said, pretending to rub my stomach and forcing a smile. Adrian stared at me, then slowly put down his spoon, but I saw his knuckles turn white, as if he were holding back his anger. Emily looked for silent ways to help me. Once, when Adrian put a piece of meat on my plate, she quickly spilled a glass of water that spread all over the table. "Oh, sorry, let me clean that up," Emily said hastily, running for a cloth, but her look at me was full of worry. Adrian grumbled. "As clumsy as you are you going to let your mom starve to death?" Emily lowered her head, not responding, but I saw her shoulders tremble. I wanted to hug her, to scream at Adrian that I knew his whole plan, but I remembered Kate's words, "Don't let him suspect." I could only clench my fists under the table, holding back the pain and helplessness. In the midst of that suffocating atmosphere, Jack became a rare ray of light. He would knock on the door frequently, with excuses like, "Just stopping by to say hello for a bit. Being alone at home is so boring." He would bring a basket of fruit, or sometimes just a story about the weather, but his presence made me feel safer, even if only a little. It visibly annoyed Adrian, his glare shooting daggers at Jack every time he appeared. But he couldn't kick out an elderly neighbor without raising suspicion. Once, while Jack was telling a story about the neighborhood, he gave me a discreet wink, as if to tell me he was still watching, that he was protecting us. "Take good care of yourself, Carol," he said, with a tone full of meaning. I nodded, silently thanking him, who was like a fragile shield protecting us. Meanwhile, I received a message from Kate, confirming that the police were closing in on Adrian. "We found out he used the inheritance money from Mr. Arthur to pay off part of his debt to the crime syndicate," she wrote. "The evidence is piling up, but be careful, he could act desperately." Kate's words filled me with both hope and fear. I knew this drama was about to end, but I also knew that when a beast realizes it's cornered, it becomes twice as dangerous. At night, I would lie on the couch, hugging Sophia and Lucas, listening to Adrian's footsteps in his room. He would mutter to himself, his voice low but full of tension. "I just need to finish this and everything will be fine." Those words were like a stab to my heart. What did he mean by this? Me, Emily, or our entire family? I hugged my grandchildren tighter, trying to hide the fear that was screaming inside me. Sophia, asleep, whispered, "Grandma, don't go." I stroked her hair. Tears fell silently. "I'm not going anywhere, my love," I said, but my voice broke, as if I didn't believe it myself. I checked my phone in secret. Kate had sent a message. "We are preparing the arrest warrant. Stay safe. Don't do anything rash." I put the phone away, praying that the police would act before Adrian did something terrible. On that fateful night, the air in the house was so thick I could hardly breathe. Adrian had prepared an unusually large dinner, as if he were setting up a final scene. The aroma of roasted meat and freshly baked bread filled the air, but it only made my stomach churn. He raised a glass of red wine, his eyes shining with a poorly disguised insistence. "Mom, tonight you really have to have a glass with me, to show that you trust us." His voice was soft, but I heard the hidden threat in every word. The glass sparkled under the light, but in my mind, the image of the cyanide jar under the sink appeared vividly. I tried to smile, gripping the edge of the table to hide my trembling. "I have high blood pressure. The doctor forbade me from drinking alcohol," I said, my voice weak, looking for an excuse. But Adrian interrupted me. His voice became a growl, his gaze darkened. "Just one sip, or do you think we want to harm you?" His words were like a knife, plunging directly into my heart. I looked at Emily, standing beside him, her face pale, her trembling hands clutching the back of a chair. She kept her head down, but I saw her eyes filled with tears, as if she were begging me not to touch that glass. Sophia, with the innocence of a child, broke the suffocating silence. "Grandma, have a drink with my daddy." Her voice was songy, but her eyes were full of worry, as if she sensed something was wrong. My heart sank. I wanted to hug her, to scream that it was all a trap, but I knew I had to stay calm. I took a deep breath, about to make up another excuse, when Adrian came closer, grabbed the glass, and tried to force it into my hand. "Mom, don't disappoint me," he said, his voice low and threatening. Just at that moment, when the glass was inches from my hand, the front door burst open with a crash. "Police! Nobody move!" Detective Miller's voice rang out, firm and powerful. A team of special agents stormed in, pointing their weapons and flashlights directly at Adrian. The glass fell from his hands, shattering on the floor. The shards of glass glittered like the pieces of his evil plan. He stammered, his face pale. "What? What's happening? What are you doing here?" Miller approached, his gaze as cold as steel. He read the arrest warrant out loud and clear. "Adrian Mendez, you are under arrest for the murder of your father, Arthur Mendez, and for the attempted murder of your mother-in-law, Carol." Adrian resisted, screaming in panic. "This is slander. My father died of a heart attack. You have no proof." But Kate, standing next to Miller, coldly held up a transparent evidence bag. "We have the forensic report confirming the presence of cyanide in Mr. Arthur's body, your promissory note with the crime syndicate, and the photo of the cyanide jar you were hiding in the kitchen," she said, her voice so sharp it cut the air. Adrian turned to Emily, his eyes bloodshot, like a wounded beast. "Emily, say something. Tell them your mother is making it all up," he shouted, his voice trembling but full of threat. I looked at Emily, praying she would have the strength to face him, and then she straightened up. Her hands were no longer shaking. "No," Emily said, her voice trembling but firm. "I am going to testify against you. You killed your father, and you tried to kill my mother." Her words were like the final blow, plunging directly into Adrian's heart. He was stunned, his face contorting in desperation. The cries of Sophia and Lucas erupted, echoing in the chaotic room. I held my 2 grandchildren tightly, whispering, "It's okay, my children. Grandma is here." Sophia snuggled against me. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Grandma, did they really take my daddy away?" she asked, her voice choked. I stroked her hair, holding back my own tears. "Yes, my love. But now everything is going to be okay." Lucas hugged my leg, his round eyes full of fear, but I felt a relief in the boy's heart, as if he too knew the nightmare was over. They handcuffed Adrian. 2 officers held him firmly and led him out. He kept looking back, his hateful eyes fixed on Emily and me. "You'll pay for this," he screamed, but his voice faded as they dragged him out of the house. The entire neighborhood seemed to be watching the house. The murmurs of the neighbors could be heard from the gate. I saw Jack standing there. His gaze was soft but firm. He gave me a slight nod, as if to say, "Ma'am, it's all over." I smiled at him, my heart full of gratitude. Without him, his warning from the very first day, perhaps I wouldn't be here anymore. When the police left, I hugged Emily. She collapsed in my arms, crying like a child. "Mom, forgive me. I put you in danger," she sobbed. I stroked her hair. Tears fell silently. "It wasn't your fault, Emily. I'm just glad that you and the children are safe." I held her tightly, feeling her warmth, something I thought I would never feel again. The months following Adrian's arrest were a long and tense time, but also full of hope. Emily, the children, and I continued to live in that house, but we hired someone to do some remodeling, to let in more sunlight and fresh air. Every day, I tried to help Emily and my grandchildren find peace again. But the ghost of Adrian was still a shadow that haunted us in our nightmares. I knew that to truly close the past, we needed justice. And then, the day of Adrian's trial arrived, an event that shocked the entire city. I entered the courtroom, my heart heavy but full of determination. Emily sat beside me. Her trembling hands were clasped together, her face still marked by suffering. Sophia and Lucas stayed with Susan. I didn't want my grandchildren to witness this. Jack was there too, his gaze firm, like an old soldier ready to fight to the end. We were the witnesses, the ones who carried on our shoulders the responsibility of bringing the truth to light. The prosecutor began with a voice of steel, presenting one piece of irrefutable evidence after another. He showed the forensic report, proving that Don Arthur's death was from cyanide poisoning, not a heart attack as Adrian had claimed. Then came the promissory note with Adrian's signature and thumbprint, proving his motive, the huge debt to the crime syndicate. After that, the photo of the cyanide jar I took in the kitchen. That image was like a cold stab that silenced the room. Finally, the prosecutor read my statement, and Emily's, recounting the times Adrian tried to force me to eat and drink, the times Emily spilled the food to protect me, and the terrifying calls my daughter had overheard. Adrian's lawyer, a tall, thin man with a syrupy voice, tried to defend the indefensible. "My client is innocent," he exclaimed. "His mother-in-law, Mrs. Carroll, suffers from delusions due to her advanced age, and Miss Emily, unhappy in her marriage, invented this story to harm her husband." His words were like a knife in my heart. I looked at Emily and saw her lower her head, her hands clenched until they were white. But I couldn't let those lies win. I stood up, took a deep breath, and my firm voice echoed in the silent room. "I know exactly what I saw. My own son-in-law prepared the poisoned soup and wine glass. I saw the cyanide jar in the kitchen, and I heard his threats. I am not crazy, and I will not allow the truth to be twisted." My words broke the silence, causing a murmur in the courtroom. I saw Jack's gaze. He nodded slightly, as if encouraging me. It was Emily's turn. She stood up, her hands still shaking, but her voice was resolute. "He lied, saying he wanted to reconcile. But in reality he was planning to murder my mother," Emily said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I heard his call when he was talking about buying cyanide. I saw him mistreat our family, and I cannot stay silent any longer." Her crying echoed, but it was a cry of liberation, that of a woman who had found her strength after years trapped in fear. The jury listened, their faces serious. The prosecutor continued presenting more details. The messages between Adrian and the crime syndicate, the bank records showing he used the inheritance to pay the debt, and Jack's testimony about Don Arthur's suspicions before he died. It all fit together like a perfect puzzle, painting the portrait of a cold-blooded killer, willing to sacrifice his own father and his mother-in-law to get what he wanted. After hours of deliberation, the jury finally delivered its verdict. The judge stood up. His voice boomed in the courtroom. "Adrian Mendez is found guilty of the murder of Mr. Arthur Mendez and the attempted murder of Mrs. Carroll. Given the exceptionally serious nature of your crimes, you represent a danger to society. The court sentences you to life in prison, without the possibility of parole." Oh! The sound of the gavel hitting the desk echoed like the final period to the nightmare that had tormented our family. Adrian collapsed in his chair, his face contorted, his bloodshot eyes fixed on Emily and me. He said nothing, but that look was full of hatred, as if he wanted to devour us. I took Emily's hand. I felt it tremble, but I also saw a new strength in her. The police took Adrian away, and when the courtroom door closed, I felt as if a huge stone had been lifted from my chest. Emily was granted a unilateral divorce shortly after the trial, gaining full custody of Sophia and Lucas. When we left the courthouse, I held my 2 grandchildren's hands, and we walked under the warm Sunday. Lucas looked up, his round eyes full of innocence. "Grandma, does that mean no one is going to fight in our house anymore?" I smiled. Tears fell silently. "That's right, my boy. From now on, We will only live in peace, I said, stroking his hair, my heart full of hope. One afternoon, several weeks later, I was sitting in the small backyard garden, watching Emily hang laundry under the golden Sunday. She was smiling, a soft but genuine smile, something I hadn't seen in a long time. Sophia and Lucas were running on the lawn. Their laughter echoed like a melody, healing the wounds in my heart. Jack came over, bringing a basket of freshly cut mangoes, with a kind smile on his face. "For the children to eat," he said, leaving the basket next to me. "Thank you, Jack," I replied. My voice choked. "Without you, I don't know what would have become of us." He shook his head. His gaze was tender. "You are stronger than you think, Carol. Your family deserves to be happy." He turned to water the plants in his yard, but I knew he would always be the neighbor, the friend we could trust. Watching that peaceful scene, I knew the nightmare had truly ended. Our small house, though simple, was now filled with love and hope. Emily started working at a nearby flower shop. Her hands skillfully arranged each bouquet, as if she were rebuilding the pieces of her own life. Sophia returned to school, her drawings now full of bright colors, without the dark strokes of the past. Lucas, with his radiant smile, often ran to hug me, telling me about the new toy cars he made himself. Every night I sit by the window, hugging the old family photo. The image of Emily smiling radiantly, with Sophia and Lucas by her side, is no longer a distant memory. It is a reminder that, no matter how terrifying the darkness is, love and strength will always guide us toward the light. I whisper a prayer, thanking God for giving us the chance to start over. From here, in this little house full of laughter, my family will build a new future where there will be no more fear, only love and peace. I have come to the end of this story, and from these painful experiences, I understand that the greatest lesson I have learned is this: love and courage are the most powerful weapons to overcome the darkness. Never let silence and fear turn you into a victim in your own home. Trust your instincts, listen to the smallest signs, because sometimes they are the lifeline you need. And, above all, justice may be slow, but it arrives, as long as we do not give up our faith and determination to protect those we love. The story you have just heard has been modified in names and locations to protect the identities of the people involved. We do not tell this to judge, but in the hope that someone will listen and stop to reflect on how many mothers are suffering in silence within their own homes. I truly wonder, if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to remain silent to keep the peace, or would you dare to face it all to reclaim your voice? I want to know your opinion, because every story is like a candle that can light someone else's path. God always blesses, and I am convinced that bravery leads us to better days. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I leave you two of the channel's most beloved stories. I'm sure they will surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.